trăm năm trong cõi người ta. Chữ tài chữ mệnh khéo làng ghét nhau. Trải qua một cuộc bể dâu, những điều trông thấy mà đau đớn lòng.
Thank you very much, singer Phạm Thị Huệ. Hello and welcome to another edition of Talk Vietnam. Now, The Tale of Kiều is one of the most famous Vietnamese literary masterpieces written in Nôm script by Nguyễn Du in the 19th century. The poem has gone far beyond its border to gain international acclaim. And the year 2015 also marks the 250th birthday of great poet Nguyễn Du. And this is a good chance for scholars and friends of Vietnam all over the world to honor the values that it offers. Well, on this occasion, we have also invited on our show today some international scholars. And the first guest of today's show, may I introduce Dr. Charles Burnett from the US. Well, he fell in love with the Tale of Kiều nearly 50 years ago, and he also wrote a very famous thesis about the work. Hello, Charles. Thank you very much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Now, it's surprising to know that you knew about the Tale of Kiều nearly 50 years ago, way before I myself was born. So how, can you tell us the very first moment that you get to know the work?
I know that when I first came to Vietnam, which was indeed almost 50 years ago, which I dare say was before you were born, when I first came to Vietnam, we saw each other every night, almost without exception. There was no electricity where I lived, so I had a Coleman in English called a Coleman lantern, đèn mang sông. And when I opened some of my Kiều books, I find all the bugs that died be flying into my kerosene lantern. And so we saw each other all the time, and it became my hobby, and it has lasted for almost 50 years. I hope for 50 years.
Your relationship with that girl, aka Truyện Kiều, nearly 50 years. So what is your first impression of the Tale of Kiều?
For me, it was like vocabulary, because I couldn't understand the poem. I couldn't understand the story. I couldn't understand the poetics. But as I understood more, then I understood the language and how beautiful the language is, and how it's beautiful when it's read, but it's even more beautiful when it's sung or chanted. And so it's a song. In the beginning, of course, that was not something I could understand. It was much later that I could understand that. And that's why I say, in the beginning, she was very patient and just encouraged me to never stop.
Can you elaborate more on the first phases of your studying of Kiều? Like, I believe that it must have been quite challenging even to understand the annotation, because it is a different language from yours.
True. You accept the fact that it will take time, that you cannot have it now, but if you never quit, it will be yours. And so that's all I had to do, was convince myself that the Tale of Kiều was worth working hard for, and it was. And I never quit. So, sure, there were parts that I didn't understand, but I didn't expect to. I will in time, and I did.
So how long did it take you to fully understand the whole Tale of Kiều?
If I started in 1967, I was still studying in 1975. when I went back to the United States in 1975, that's when I studied Kiều the most. I think I missed Vietnam. I was homesick. And so Kiều was my connection to Vietnam. So I spent at least 12 hours every day studying and thinking about my future and what I will do. And that's how I happened to go back to university and to teach and also to write a thesis. And of course, when they asked me what I wanted to write my thesis on, it was not hard to tell that I wanted to write it about Kiều.
Charles Burnett's PhD thesis started from a simple idea that he wanted to create an annotated translation for anybody who wants to study Kiều. For the introduction, he would like to write about the origin of the tale of Kiều. Then it quickly became an exhaustive search in libraries throughout Asia for additional materials. After 6 years visiting Tokyo, Dalian, Beijing, Taipei, in 1981, he finished his 400-page dissertation at Harvard University with the title The Evolution of the Vương Truyện Kiều Tale from Historical Event in China to Literary Masterpiece in Vietnam. It consists of 5 chapters tracing how the great narrative poem, The Tale of Kiều, came into being.
So, you know, of all the chapters, I personally like the part where Truyện Kiều meets Tu Hai and gets married to Tu Hai the most, because that's a happy part. I feel like Truyện Kiều seems to finally find the light at the end of the tunnel, even though it doesn't last long. And later I found out in your thesis that Tu Hai and Hồ Tuân Hiến were actually real historical figures, and I was fascinated. So can you elaborate more on those findings?
What I can say is that it's the most complicated part of the whole thesis.
Of the whole thesis, okay.
And so it's not really easy. First of all, it's complicated because the social situation in China at the time. If you read the official history, Japanese pirates were attacking the Chinese coast. If you read unofficial histories, the local people who used to trade, who used to go fishing, were no longer allowed to do that. So they joined the Japanese. And so you have this unrest along the seacoast. Tu Hai's uncle was a trader, a merchant man. He lived in Japan because that's where he had to live. He was also a pirate. Tu Hai became involved. Before that, Tu Hai was a Buddhist monk in a pagoda in Hangzhou.
Wow.
Nobody in Vietnam knows about this.
I don't know that either.
No, his name was Sri Ming Shan, Tu Min Sheng. And so how to stop these people attacking from Japan? Japan gets all the bad. One way would be to attack them. One way would be to say, if you surrender, I will give you. And so the question was, the court in Beijing said very clearly, no pardon, no amnesty, kill them all. But if you don't have enough soldiers, you don't do it. So what Hồ Tuân Hiến did and didn't do becomes a question of whose account you choose to believe. The official account is that he had one intention, which is to, as in Kim Bun Kiều, trick Tu Hai to surrender so he could kill him. So he's not a very nice guy. And then we know also that after Hai died, there was a victory banquet, and he molested Kiều, and then he married her off to what they call a tribal chieftain, who was just a militia force from a local province, Hunan, I think. And so no love for Hồ Tuân Hiến as a result of the story. And that started the story, because you have a tragic girl, Kiều, you have a Mandarin who is dishonest, and you have somebody that wants to act his part. So you have those 3 figures, and throughout the whole development of the story, they start to grow, they start to unfold as very special characters. And that's what Nguyen Yu inherited, and then of course he added to that.
So like Nguyễn Du actually made use of the plot from a Chinese novel, as we all know. But why do you think that his work still gained lots of acclaim?
I think the answer is very simple. It's very clear. The Chinese novel is mediocre. It's not a great novel. It did not enjoy great favor. There were lots of editions, so we can say that it wasn't completely unnoticed. So there must be something that when you put into it to make it that caliber. And of course, it's the language, it's the musicality, what I call the musicality. I'm not a poet, but it sings. And people like it because it sounds nice. Even they cannot understand it, but it rhymes and it makes sense at one level just because it makes beautiful language. That's my part, what I think is correct answer, and it's also what I believe.
Cherished for its creativity, independent thinking, and distillation of Vietnamese culture, Nguyễn Du's The Tale of Kiều is considered to have had the longest and richest receptive history in Vietnamese literature. The nation's epic gnome novel has been adapted into numerous artistic forms, such as literary scenarios, music, painting, stage performances, movies, and ballet in Vietnam and other countries. In terms of writing, The Tale of Kiều has been translated into almost all popular languages and made accessible to a large audience in all major cultures around the world. According to Rainer Kreysack, a French researcher and translator, The Tale of Kiều by Nguyễn Du is truly a literary masterpiece, comparable to any great works in any other countries during any periods. Many statesmen also quoted some verses from The Tale of Kiều to express their understanding of Vietnamese culture and used these as a bridge to build friendship with Vietnam.
The great Vietnamese poet Nguyen Du had written, "Thank heaven we're here today to see the sun through the parting fog and clouds," because it is parting. We're here.
With his great works, Nguyễn Du has been honored by the world. In 1965, he was honored as the World Cultural Celebrity by the World Peace Council on the anniversary of his 200th birthday. In October 2013, UNESCO General Assembly's 37th session issued a resolution to honor and celebrate Nguyễn Du's 250th birth anniversary in 2015.
So after all these research, what do you think are the most significant values that the work has to offer?
For me, the value, I learned something beautiful that I could understand that many people had difficulty understanding. That's a personal, selfish kind of thing.
Good to pleasure.
I learned about something that if I was living in Vietnam meant that I could always have something to talk about to people who were at this level or at this level. It didn't matter. There was always something that I could talk about that was their topic, not my topic. Many times Vietnamese talk to foreigners about what foreigners are interested in. But this was something that I could talk about that I could predict that Vietnamese would be. So it was very easy to have conversations. And so there's a part of me that says that Kiều helped me understand that if like I said, she was very thông cảm, understanding, and just told me, don't quit.
Don't quit.
Keep trying.
Keep on trying.
Cố gắng không ngừng. And so I think I learned that if there's something that you want and you're willing to pay the price, being time and work, and you think it's worth it, that it's possible.
An international conference entitled The Legacy and Historical Importance of Nguyễn Du great national poet and global personality, was held last August in Hanoi. The event gathered more than 100 Vietnamese and foreign scholars around the world, including Japan, France, South Korea, and the Czech Republic, among others. They delve into the values of Nguyễn Du's works and reveal new perspectives and approaches to studying his writings.
Trong các tham luận gửi đến lần này thì các học giả, đặc biệt là các học giả nước ngoài, cho biết chúng ta biết những cái thông tin về truyện Kiều đã vượt biên giới thế nào và được tiếp nhận ở các quốc gia khác ra sao. Những cái đánh giá Nguyễn Du từ góc nhìn liên văn bản, đánh giá Nguyễn Du từ góc nhìn tự sự học và thi pháp học, đánh giá Nguyễn Du từ góc nhìn văn hóa chính là những cái độ mở mới trong diễn giải về di sản văn hóa Nguyễn Du.
The deeper the tale of Kiều is explored, the more cultural dimensions are discovered, as well as admiration and appreciation for Nguyễn Du grows.
Tôi rất là khâm phục đại thi hào Nguyễn Du và cô cũng rất là thích Kim Vân Kiều truyện của Nguyễn Du.
Đó là một trong những tác phẩm son sắc nhất trên thế giới và rất nổi tiếng ở Nga.
Nguyễn Du dựa vào Phật giáo và Nho giáo mà sáng tác viết ra truyện Kiều. Đó là nguồn gốc nảy sinh sự sâu sắc, tính sâu sắc của tác phẩm.
So do you have any suggestions or advice to give to maybe younger scholars wanting to do research on the tale of Kiều?
Well, I think that the most important bit of advice was don't be discouraged. It's easy to assume that you can never understand it all. It's long. It has lots of Chinese solutions. The good news is that there's only 21,000, and many of those are duplicates, characters to learn, because that's how many are in the entire poem. It's worth the effort, but there's a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm. So just don't give up. Keep on trying, and
that's persistence is the solution to many problems.
Yeah, wow, that's great. That's a great advice.
That's what Kiều taught me.
Wow. Okay. Thank you very much for spending time here with us, and thank you very much for your amazing work that you've done researching the tale of Kiều. I myself learned a lot from that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Right after the international conference, 100 Vietnamese and international scholars paid a visit to the Nguyễn Du Memorial in Hà Tĩnh province. Here, they had a chance to see the gallery house displaying over 1,000 objects related to the life and career of Nguyễn Du and the Nguyễn family in Dien Dien. They also offer incense to the tomb of Nguyễn Du.
The first time that I came to Nguyen Du's memorial was in 1995. I had made a decision to leave Vietnam and go to China to work. But I thought to myself, before I do that, I must do something I always wanted to do but never did, which was to come here and pay my respects to Nguyen Du.
Some scholars visited the site many times, but each time they learned something new.
Every time, I think the Nguyen Du teaching something to me, like peace and humanity.
Tôi nghĩ rằng là cái chuyến đi cũng là một cái sự động viên khích lệ và có thể nói là cổ vũ Đảng bộ Nhân dân Hà Tĩnh phải nỗ lực vươn lên để phát huy làm thế nào để là vừa phát huy những cái giá trị của di sản Nguyễn Du để lại, tự hào nhưng mà đồng thời mình cũng phải nỗ lực vươn lên để là xứng đáng với cái sự quan tâm của các nhà khoa học, của các đồng chí lãnh đạo của thế giới cũng như của Trung ương đối với Hà Tĩnh, đối với Đại Thi Hào.
So you've just watched some footages of the international scholars' visit to Nguyễn Du historical site in the central province of Hà Tĩnh. Well, among these scholars, there's one very young 24-year-old scholar who has not only made great effort in doing research on the tale of Kiều, but also on his way to translating this Vietnamese work into his mother tongue, which is Czech. And today we have the honor to invite him here on the show with us, Mr. Jan Komarek. Hi Jan, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Well, you know, to be honest, I really admire scholars like you. You've made great effort translating the Vietnamese a work of literature, which I myself found very hard to understand, and you translate it into your language. So why? What makes you decide to go for it?
The reason why I decided to work in Kiel was that I wanted to do something about literature, and there is basically nothing in this field in the Czech Republic. And you know, Nguyen Du is the greatest poet, so that's why I decided for him. And I also read a translation of Truyện Kiều to Czech, an older translation. It was translated from French, not from Vietnamese. And I liked the story, and I thought maybe I could do that better.
Wow, that's great to hear. But why Vietnam? Like, why did you look for a literary work in Vietnam but not other countries?
Yeah, that was because I started studying Vietnamese studies, and I started studying Vietnamese studies because I wanted to study literature, and then I needed to choose a field. We've got many Vietnamese in the Czech Republic. It's 60,000, so there's quite a lot of people in the Czech Republic to talk to about this stuff. Yeah, that's why Vietnamese.
So, can you tell us what is the most difficult part in the translation process?
I think the most difficult part are the allusions, because it's always hard to decide how to translate the allusion. For example, it's the third verse in Truyện Kiều. It's trải qua một cuộc bể dâu, which literally means there was an event of sea and mulberry. Well, and that suddenly appears some mulberry. Well, most of the Czech readers don't even know how mulberry looks like and what it does in the poem. So here you have to decide. Either you can translate it literally, so you say there was an event of sea and mulberry. Well, no one understands.
Doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's not poetry, definitely. So you can change it to be the sea transformed into mulberry fields. Well, now it makes a little bit of sense. It sounds a little bit like poetry, but still you need to add some explanation. Where does it come from? What does it mean in the literary tradition, and so on. So that's the way how I do it most of the time. To translate it, not literally, but close to the literary meaning, and then add the explanation. And to find the real meaning is also a difficult part, because I use several editions of Truyện Kiều in Vietnamese, and sometimes they're contradicting, so I need to find what I think is right.
So can you share your method of translating?
Yeah.
How do you translate?
My method is based on methods of various Czech translators from Chinese. We've got a great tradition of translations from Chinese. That is basically that you double the number of syllables. That is also a way which was applied in translating Kiel. It was applied by an Australian translator, Vladislav Zhukov. So it's not 6/8, it's 12/16, and you keep the rhymes as they were in the original. So you have one rhyme in 3 syllables. That is quite a demanding way how to translate, because you know it's much more difficult to make rhymes in Czech language or in English than in Vietnamese. It's also difficult to keep the meaning as in the original.
So as you just said that, you know, it has 6/8 meter and it has rhyming verses.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that quintessence in your translation?
It's always a balancing, you know, you need to decide. But I think the best way is to keep close to the meaning and still respect the form. not to choose one way, just to stay somewhere in between. That's it.
The Tale of Kiều, which has 3,254 verses, has been translated into some 20 different languages. And for English alone, there are up to 5 different versions. So we're going to learn more about that in the following.
Not only English, but also Polish, French, Hungarian, German, Russian, Korean, and Japanese. The Vietnamese Tale of Kiều has traveled around the globe.
Truyện Kiều khi được dịch sang tiếng nước ngoài thì nó không còn là một cái tác phẩm văn học nữa, mà thậm chí nó là một cái hiện tượng văn hóa mà thế giới các cái dân tộc khác người ta rất chú ý để người ta không những nghiên cứu văn học Việt Nam mà người ta nghiên cứu tính cách tâm hồn người Việt Nam.
Tôi rất là thích thú vì đó là một tác phẩm, một tiểu thuyết về cuộc sống rất là đau khổ, một con người đơn giản mà đã phải trải qua bao nhiêu đau khổ nhưng mà luôn luôn lại còn giữ cho mình một cái bản sắc riêng, cái đạo đức riêng và luôn luôn cố gắng là hoàn cảnh thế nào nhưng mà mình vẫn cố gắng làm con người chính đáng.
Cái giá trị của nhân dân, của con người như thế này, cho nên tất cả người ở trong thế giới này cũng có ý kiến giống nhau, đẹp lắm và rất hay.
This love for the Tale of Kiều has motivated many international academics to translate this Vietnamese work into different languages. Young Russian poet Vasily Popov has spent 2 years with a group of Russian and Vietnamese scholars translating the whole tale into Russian. They have recently published the first full translation of the story.
I love the Tale of Kiều because I can see many similarities between Vietnamese and Russian souls. This literary work doesn't tell the story of one nation, it is for the world. Therefore, it should be translated into different languages. I'm in charge of transforming the translated version of Kiều into Russian, from a short story into poetry. This is the most difficult task. I faced many challenges when translating the allusions and metaphors used by Nguyễn Du into Russian.
Nhiều cái bản dịch thành công nhất cũng có thể vấp váp bởi vì là nghiên cứu những cái mã văn hóa Việt Nam mà nó ẩn đằng sau những cái từ ngữ Nguyễn Du sử dụng. Nhiều khi là người nước ngoài ta không rành thì có thể dẫn đến những sai lầm.
These difficulties have actually sparked more academic interest in ensuring that translations more closely adhere to what Nguyễn Du really meant. Korean professor An Kyung-hwan started translating the Tale of Kiều into Korean in 2003 and finished his work 11 months later. Since his first published version in 2004, Professor An hasn't stopped researching so he can improve his translation. 6,000 copies of the Korean translation have been published. An's translation has helped the Vietnamese Tale of Kiều connect with Korea's literary culture.
Korean literature was surprised. Vietnam has the Truyện Kiều, like a masterpiece in the world. They respect the content of the Truyện Kiều and the skill of Nguyễn Du.
Not only translating individually, scholars and translators like An Kyung-hwan and Vasily Popov also meet at various international conferences to figure out the optimum translation methods. This shows that the Tale of Kiều has universal appeal.
Đầu tiên là mình rất là trân trọng các cái tâm huyết, các cái nỗ lực cố gắng của nhiều học giả, nhiều nhà nghiên cứu, nhiều nhà thơ nước ngoài. Họ muốn giới thiệu truyện Kiều mình sang cho các cái dân tộc khác. Thì đây là có thể nói là không những là cái niềm tự hào như là với tư cách là tác giả Nguyễn Du là cái tác giả Việt Nam, mà mình tự hào là văn hóa Việt Nam cũng có những cái đỉnh cao mà khiến cho nhân loại người ta quan tâm.
During the translation process, you must have gone through lots of other translations in other languages. So what do you think about those translations?
Well, I think I can bring something new. when it comes to Czech translations, they're from French. They're now very accurate. So I think I can do better. And when it comes to English translations, there is that Huyen Sang Tong's translation into blank verse, and that's a great translation, really. But it doesn't respect the original form. Vladislav Zhukov's translation does respect the original form, but it's not really a scholarly translation. So I want to combine these two approaches into one. And that's, I think, something new.
Oh, okay. So now I'm sure that the audiences and myself as well would love to listen to some of the part that you have translated into Czech. So will you recite some parts of the Tale of Kiel for us?
Yeah, let's see if I can remember. So the first 6 verses I can try.
Okay.
100 let zde na světě člověku dáno jest, co musí nadání s osudem bojů svést, než uplynou. Než moře morušnou se stane planinou, co věcí zraky zří, jež v lidské srdce tnou a utkví v něm. Lne zlé vždy k dobrému, to přeci je známo všem, tak modrá nebesa, žárlíce stihnou zlem, růž ve tvářích.
Wow. That's great, that's great. You know, although I couldn't understand Czech, but I can still listen to some of the rhyming parts in the translation. Great job, great job.
Well, thank you.
Well, so you've just enjoyed some verses of the Tale of Kiel by Jan in Czech language. So now let's enjoy Kiel in other languages.
In 100 Jahren, die vielleicht ein Leben währt in dieser Erdenspanne, widersprechen oft sich Gabe und Geschick. So musste ich in Zeiten, da Gedanken sich und Menschen wandelten wie Meere, aus den Wogen wuchsen Maulbeerfelder, Dinge schauen, die mein Herz zerrissen.
幸いなるかな開口し闘争の会にて花探せ光栄見たり垣間より春蘭秋菊愛きそう。
Она умолкла и без чувств упала, ударилась о камень головой, тихая грудь вся кровью полыхала, но вдруг он вздрогнул, словно бы живой, и покачнулся, и упал с ней рядом, обняв ее мертвой рукой.
사람은 업보를 지고 태어나는 것이니 하늘이 가깝다 멀다 탓하지 말지어다. 선의 근원은 우리의 마음속에 있는 것이고 마음 심자는 제주 제자 세계와 맞먹는 것이라.
So what about the progress of your translation work so far? How many parts left?
Well, I finished like a tenth of the whole poem, which is not much.
Still a long way to go,
yeah,
right?
a very long way to go, and I have very few time because I got a lot of things to do to school, and so that's the problem. I need to find some time to translate, but first I need to write the works. I need to write the thesis, and then maybe if I get some scholarship again to stay in Vietnam for some time, for a year or so, I think the work goes best when I'm in Vietnam because I have much time here. I don't have many friends here, so I can really concentrate on the work. So maybe in a year, if I'm here again, I will not be teaching English again, I will be translating Kiều.
So you're saying is that you're now focusing on finding a scholarship to go back to Vietnam and continue the work that you've been doing, right?
Yeah, that's the goal for now.
How long do you expect it would take you to finish your translation work?
Well, it's actually possible to count it because I observed that the maximum I can translate in one day is 10 verses. So if I have a year of doing nothing, it is a year, but I don't have a year of pleasure, so it's gonna be much more, and I'm afraid it's gonna be, well, I don't know, 5, maybe even more years.
Museum of Literature. The table, the book, the pen tube at the place where Nguyễn Du used to sit and wrote Kiều. Traveling to Vietnam this time, scholars from the US, Czech Republic and Korea, along with other scholars in the Vietnam Kiều Study Association, visited the special corner of Nguyễn Du's artwork at the Museum of Vietnamese Literature.
Ở Hàn Quốc là khó tìm tài liệu về Truyện Kiều và Nguyễn Du, mà lần này tôi đến đây là có thể thấy nhiều quyển sách về Truyện Kiều là xuất bản thời đại khác nhau, cho nên là tôi cố gắng thêm tìm tài liệu nữa để so sánh Truyện Kiều và giới thiệu cho người Hàn Quốc.
Different versions of Kiều were introduced to international scholars by Nguyễn Khắc Bảo, a member of the Vietnam Kiều Study Association. Among those, there is a handwritten version of Kiều in Nôm characters. This version is considered the earliest one.
Cái cuốn này là sưu tầm ở vùng Kinh Bắc. Cuốn này nó có một cái câu đặc hữu không bản nào có. Tức là cái câu thứ 5 ấy, là nó là lạ gì bỉ sắc thử phong, chứ không phải lạ gì bỉ sắc tư phong. Mà thử phong nó mới đúng vào cái câu gốc Hán là phong vô bỉ sắc vô thử. Thì ở đây là cụ viết là bỉ sắc thử phong, thì nó đúng hơn.
I must say that when Mr. Bao showed me the Nome editions, my mind started to think very quickly, aha, I must do that. I must look at every character, every word, compare, put it in my database, and then decide. So that was exciting, but I don't know if I'm going to live so long to be able to do that. It's a lot of work.
Despite coming from different countries, speaking different languages, these scholars share one thing in common, the love for the tale of Kiều. Their common language is the poetic language of Kiều.
Trăm năm trồng cõi người ta, chữ tài, chữ mệnh, khéo là ghét nhau.
Quan kia theo mãi với tên, một mình biết, một mình hay.
Ồ, rất hay.
Thiên can ở tay lòng ta, chữ tâm kia mới bằng pha chữ tài.
Dở ra đọc bằng tiếng Việt thì trong một cái không gian của Nguyễn Du như thế này thì cái đó vô cùng quý, và cái đó là nó thể hiện là cái tấm lòng của những cái họ là đại diện cho không phải chỉ một cái người Mỹ hay một người Hàn Quốc hay một người Czech, mà đấy là thể hiện của những người nước ngoài nói chung. Người ta yêu quý cái văn học Việt Nam, yêu quý Nguyễn Du và yêu quý những cái gì mà của nền văn hóa Việt Nam mà họ cảm nhận được.
So today you visited the Vietnam Museum of Literature with the Vietnam Kiều Association. So you had a chance to meet with a lot of Kiều lovers and scholars as well. So what do you think about that visit?
Well, it's a small place, but definitely fascinating to see a desk that Nguyen Du was using, plate he was given in China. And the most interesting part was definitely meeting the scholars and to see the editions, the old editions of Kiều they still hold, and to see their work, like, you know, they're interested in every change of character between the versions. Yeah, it's, as Charles Burnett said, it's a lifetime of work.
So did you learn anything from today's visit? And does that add to your translation work?
Well, I've learned I want to work with the old editions because it's too way complicated.
So you spent a lot of time researching and translating the Tale of Kiều into your language. So what influence has the Tale of Kiều had in your life so far?
There is a message in Kiều. It's in the end of the story, which says that the whole story is about a talented girl, and the message says that the talent is something which is not important, and that the important part is your heart, whether you're a good person or a bad person, whether you can love people or not. So I think that's the message of Kiều, but it's a very, very simple message. So I can't say that it opened my eyes, you know. But it's always good to remind this.
So we know that the Tale of Kiều is definitely a treasure for Vietnamese literature, and you yourself, you have traveled a lot to other countries as well. So what do you think about Kiều being preserved in the daily life of the Vietnamese people and also people in other countries as well?
Well, whenever I'm in Vietnam and I say that I'm interested in Kiều, well, nearly everyone can remember some of the verses, and they're always ready to recite, and some of them ready to sing. I always encounter some warm emotions when I mention that I'm interested in it. But the situation is quite different in the Czech Republic. You know, there are many young people with Vietnamese origin, but the problem is they don't know much about the culture, and mostly when I mention Kiều, they don't know what I'm talking about. They don't know that the work even exists. And I think that's a problem. It's called mất gốc, and that's something I would like to change when I complete my translation.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope that your work, your translation work, will bring more interest in the Tale of Kiều to like so many other Vietnamese and international students in Czech Republic as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
So that has been our edition of Talk Vietnam on international scholars researching and translating the Tale of Kiều into different languages. And we do hope that the Tale of Kiều will continue to be an inspiration for many more generations of researchers so that we will have a lot more to discover about this masterpiece of Vietnamese literature. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. This is Lenning, and goodbye for now.